Get that toy out of my sight. Ryan Cole snatched Emily's custom rifle off the table and hurled it across the hangar floor. The weapon spun and skidded and slammed into the far wall with a sound like a gunshot. Every operator froze. Emily crossed that room in 4 steps, dropped to both knees, and pulled the rifle against her chest with both arms, like she was pulling a wounded soldier out of the line of fire. She ran her hands across the scope, the barrel, the action, checking, assessing. Her jaw was locked so tight the muscles in her face were visibly trembling. She did not cry. She did not speak. She just looked up at Ryan Cole with eyes that made 3 combat veterans take a half step backward without realizing they had moved. If you are watching this story for the first time, hit that subscribe button right now and follow this journey all the way to the end. Drop your city in the comments below so I can see exactly how far this story has traveled. Now let us begin. The desert outside Yuma, Arizona had a way of lying to you. It looked still. It looked empty. It looked like nothing alive could survive out there under that hammer of afternoon sun, nothing but scorpions and dried up riverbed and heat that bent the horizon into something that almost looked like water. But Marcus Walker had spent enough time in places that looked peaceful to know that peaceful was almost always the most dangerous thing a landscape could pretend to be. He stood outside the hangar at the edge of the forward operating base and squinted at the ridgeline 3 miles out. Behind him inside that hangar, his team was running through gear checks. 5 operators, 6 if you counted the sniper who had arrived 30 minutes ago on a transport helicopter that nobody had been expecting. 7 if you counted the CIA liaison, a tired-looking man named Griffith who kept checking his watch and saying things like, "We are running behind and the window is closing." Marcus counted everything. That was how he had survived 12 years in the teams. He heard the argument before he walked back inside. Ryan Cole's voice carried in a way that most voices did not. It had that particular quality of a man who had never once in his adult life been told he was wrong and truly believed it. Deep, certain, sharp at the edges like broken glass. "I'm telling you," Ryan was saying, "this is a joke. This is somebody at command with a sense of humor and 0 combat experience, making decisions about men whose boots they have never laced up." Marcus stepped through the hangar door. The team was gathered around a folding table covered in maps and satellite imagery. Ryan stood at the head of it, arms crossed, jaw set. Demolition specialist Tyler Grant was leaning against a support beam, watching the argument unfold with the practiced patience of a man who had learned long ago that Ryan Cole needed to speak his piece before he would listen to anyone else. Medic Ethan Ross was sorting through his kit, his eyes moving between his supplies in the argument with the careful attention of a man cataloging everything for future reference. And then there was Emily Brooks. She was sitting on an equipment case at the far end of the table. Her rifle was propped against the wall beside her. It was a custom build, something that Marcus had never seen in the field before, a long-range precision instrument that looked like it had been assembled by someone who cared about every single fraction of an inch of it. She had her hands folded in her lap and she was watching Ryan Cole the same way a chess player watches an opponent who has just made a move they were expecting. She was 19 years old. Marcus had read her file on the flight down from Coronado 3 times because the first 2 times he had not believed it. Emily Brooks had grown up in rural Montana, the granddaughter of a Vietnam-era Marine sniper who had taught her to shoot before she could legally drive. She had qualified at ranges that senior instructors had called statistically improbable. Her scores on long-range precision tests had flagged multiple computer systems for error because the systems were not programmed to accept results that high from a candidate that young. She had sailed through SERE school. She had completed a compressed advanced sniper course in a timeline that had reportedly made the training cadre uncomfortable. On paper, she was extraordinary. In this hangar surrounded by men who had bled in Fallujah and Kandahar, and a dozen other places that never made the news, she looked like someone's kid sister who had gotten onto the wrong helicopter. "She has never been downrange," Ryan said, not bothering to lower his voice. "Not once, not a single confirmed deployment. Command wants to put our lives in the hands of a girl who learned to shoot at cans on a fence post in Montana, and they want us to trust her when the bullets start flying for real. I am not doing that. I am formally objecting." Marcus walked to the table. "Objection noted," he said. "Let's talk about the mission." "Marcus." "Ryan." He said it quietly, just the name, the way he always said it when the conversation was over. Ryan Cole closed his mouth. He did not look happy about it, but he closed his mouth. Marcus spread his hands across the satellite imagery. The asset is a CIA handler named Decker. He's been embedded with a network in this region for 14 months. 3 days ago, contact was lost. 48 hours ago, a friendly asset confirmed he is alive but compromised. He is being held in a canyon system approximately 9 miles from our current position. Intel assessment puts hostile presence at 15 to 20 fighters. We go in, we get Decker, we come home. How old is the intel? Tyler asked. 18 hours. Tyler nodded slowly. In this business, 18 hours was not a long time. 18 hours was also sometimes a lifetime. Both things were true simultaneously, and everybody in the room knew it. Extraction, Ethan asked. 2 birds. They'll be staged at the secondary LZ. Once we have Decker and we are clear of the canyon, they come to us. Emily spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, not the forced calm of someone trying to perform confidence. The genuine calm of someone whose mind was already 3 steps ahead of the conversation. The canyon layout in these images, she said. I have been looking at them since I boarded the transport. There are inconsistencies. Ryan turned his head toward her slowly. Inconsistencies. Shadow patterns, she said. She reached across the table and pointed to a specific section of the imagery without asking permission. Right here along this eastern ridge, and here see this, the way the terrain breaks at this angle, it creates a natural funnel. Whoever placed themselves at the top of that funnel would have line of sight on the entire approach. You are reading shadows in a satellite image, Ryan said. I am reading what the shadows tell me, Emily said. These were taken at 1400 hours local time. At that angle of sun, a shadow this size and this shape on this type of terrain means something is there that was not there before. Something man-made. These are prepared fighting positions. Silence in the hangar. Marcus looked at the image. He looked at the shadow she was pointing to. He could not confirm what she was seeing, but he could not dismiss it either. How many positions, he asked. At least 4 that I can identify from this imagery, she said. Possibly more on the northern approach that I cannot see clearly here. The patterns suggest coordinated placement. This is not 15 to 20 fighters reacting to a situation. This is a prepared defensive structure. Someone has been expecting visitors. Ryan looked at Marcus. She is guessing. She might be right, Marcus said. She might also be a 19-year-old reading shapes in a photograph and building a story around them. Marcus, we have done this 100 times. We go in, we execute, we extract. We do not redesign the operation based on speculation from someone who has never once been in a real fight. Emily did not raise her voice. She did not look at Ryan when she answered. She looked at Marcus. I am not asking you to redesign anything, she said. I am asking you to give the possibility that I am right the same weight you would give it if the person saying it had 20 years and a chest full of medals, because the information is the same. The math does not care how old I am. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Then Tyler Grant let out a slow breath and said very quietly, that is not a bad point. Ryan turned to look at Tyler with an expression that could have cured concrete. I am just saying, Tyler said, holding up both hands. Marcus looked at the image for another 10 seconds. Then he looked at Emily. Then he made a decision that he would think about many times in the years that followed, turning it over in his mind the way you turn over a stone to see what is underneath. We note the concern, he said. We adjust our ingress to give that eastern ridge more clearance, not a full redesign, a precaution. Everybody good. Ryan said nothing. Ethan said good. Tyler said, works for me. Emily just nodded and went back to sitting quietly at the end of the table. The mission briefing continued. They lifted off at 1700 hours as the sun was beginning its long descent toward the western mountains, and the desert shadows were stretching out long and purple across the valley floor. The helicopter was a modified Black Hawk, with its external lights killed running low and fast, the kind of approach that did not appear on civilian radar and left no signature that casual observation would catch. Marcus sat near the door and watched the terrain scroll past below them. Emily sat across from him with her rifle case across her knees and her eyes closed. He could not tell if she was sleeping or thinking. With most operators, he would have assumed sleeping. With her, he suspected thinking. Ryan Cole sat as far from Emily as the interior of the helicopter permitted. He had not spoken to her since the hangar. He had checked and rechecked his own gear with the focused attention of a man who was using routine to manage something that was Not quite anger and not quite worry. It was something in between those two things. Something that looked from the outside like arrogance, but from the inside, Marcus suspected felt a great deal more like fear. Not fear of the mission. Ryan Cole did not fear missions. Fear of being wrong. For a man like Ryan, that was worse. They inserted 2 miles from the canyon entrance. The helicopter never touched the ground, hovering at 10 feet while the team fast roped down into the darkness. Emily came down last. Her rifle case was strapped across her back, and she descended with a precision that was Marcus noted flawless. No wasted movement, no adjustment at the bottom. She hit the ground, moved immediately out of the landing zone, and was in position before the helicopter had cleared the area. Ryan watched her do it. His expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted slightly. Just slightly. They moved in silence across the desert floor. Emily peeled off from the main element at the first checkpoint, moving toward the elevated position Marcus had designated for her overwatch. She would be establishing herself nearly 2 miles from the objective, a range that would have been ambitious for most trained snipers, let alone someone on their first operational deployment. Before she went, she stopped next to Marcus. 2 miles is going to feel like a lot to you, she said quietly. It is not. I want you to know that when things start moving, I am there. I am watching. Whatever I tell you through comms, please trust it. Marcus looked at her for a moment. You have never done this before, he said. Not unkindly, just honestly. No, she said, but I have spent 10 years preparing to. That is more preparation than most people bring to the first time they do anything important in their lives. He could not argue with that. Stay on comms, he said. Report anything that does not look right. Everything out here looks right, she said. That is what does not look right about it. Then she was gone, moving up into the darkness with her rifle and her silence, and Marcus turned back to his team and began moving toward the canyon. The first 40 minutes were uneventful. Marcus felt the particular quality of tension that comes not from things going wrong, but from things going too right, too quiet, too smooth. Every experienced operator develops this sense eventually, this instinct that stillness in a dangerous place is not peace but preparation. The desert around them was alive with the sounds. It was supposed to have insects whine the distant call of something that might have been a bird. And the fact that it all sounded exactly as it should have made Marcus deeply uneasy in a way he could not have articulated to anyone who had not experienced the same thing. His earpiece crackled softly. Emily's voice. Something is moving on the eastern ridge. Same position I flagged in the briefing. I count at least 8 individuals. They are static. They are waiting. Marcus held up a fist. The team stopped. How confident? He asked into his mic. 100%, she said. They have been in position for hours. The dust signature around their positions is settled. This is not a reaction force. These people knew we were coming. Ryan's voice cut in before Marcus could respond. We are too far in to turn around. We execute and adapt. We are not turning around, Marcus said. We are adjusting. Emily gave me the northern approach assessment. A pause, the sound of wind through her mic. Northern approach is cleaner, she said, but there is something I cannot see clearly from this angle. There is a shadow pattern at the northern ridge entrance that does not make sense to me yet. I need more time with it. We do not have more time, Ryan said. I know, she said. I am telling you what I know and what I do not know. You can make the call with accurate information or without it. That part is up to you. Another silence, this one heavier than the last. Northern approach, Marcus decided. Tighter spacing, better observation intervals. Move. They moved. 6 minutes later, from approximately 300 meters ahead, the darkness erupted. Not from the eastern ridge where the waiting fighters were positioned, from a completely different direction. Muzzle flashes from a low ridge line to the west that nobody had identified in the satellite imagery, and Marcus was already moving, already giving orders, already feeling the sharp, specific clarity that combat brought to everything, the way it burned away all the noise and left only what mattered. His earpiece erupted with Emily's voice. West Ridge, I see them, I count at least 14. They are not the main element. They are designed to push you east toward the primary ambush position. Do not go east, I say again. Do not move east. Ryan was already moving east. Ryan, Marcus shouted. Ryan stopped. 3 meters from what Marcus would later understand was the outer edge of the kill zone. 3 meters. The shooting from the West Ridge intensified. Marcus grabbed the nearest available cover, and the team collapsed around him, returning fire, and through it all, Emily's voice remained steady in his ear, reporting angles and positions and movements with the calm precision of someone who was not running, or afraid, or uncertain. Someone who was doing exactly what she had spent 10 years learning to do. And in that moment, Marcus Walker understood for the first time what it meant to be truly extraordinary at something. Not brave, not reckless, not lucky. Extraordinary. She saw the battlefield the way a mathematician sees a problem. Not emotionally, not defensively, not with the noise of ego or expectation coloring the picture. Clearly, completely, all at once. 4 positions West Ridge offset approximately 40 meters between each. The southernmost is a support by fire element. The other 3 are maneuver. They want you to break right. A pause. Do not break right, break left, use the dry wash at your 9 o'clock. It runs for approximately 60 meters before it opens up, and at the end of it, you will have a covered approach to a position that will give you a defensible angle. Marcus was already moving. Dry wash left, 60 meters, he said. On me. They ran. The shooting followed them. Rounds cracked past with that particular sound that every veteran knows, that intimate, terrible sound that means the bullet went past you close enough that the physics of its passing touch the air near your face and you are still alive and you keep moving. They reached the wash. They went to ground. The shooting from the West Ridge continued for another 30 seconds and then shifted the enemy element, realigning to find them, and in the gap created by that realignment, Emily put 2 shots into the westernmost position, and it went quiet, 1 position down. Good shooting, Marcus said into his mic. Thank you, Emily said. You have approximately 90 seconds before the eastern element understands that the western push failed and begins their own movement. I recommend you use that time. Ryan Cole, breathing hard, pressed against the dirt wall of the wash, turned his head and looked at Marcus. For the first time all night, there was something in his eyes that was not certainty. She is good, he said. Marcus did not say anything. There was nothing to say. She is very good, Ryan said, quieter this time, almost to himself. I know, Marcus said. Move. They moved. And 2 miles away, on a ridge in the darkness, a 19-year-old woman with a rifle her grandfather had helped her build, tracked the second hostile position through her scope, and waited for the moment that she knew was coming, the moment when everything would become simple and terrible, and hers to decide. She had been waiting for that moment her whole life. She was ready. The dry wash smelled like dust and old copper, and the particular sharp chemical smell that comes when enough gunpowder gets burned in a small space over a short period of time. Marcus pressed his back against the dirt wall and ran a count in his head. 4 operators accounted for. 1 position on the West Ridge silenced by Emily 2 minutes ago. Eastern element not yet committed. 90 seconds of window, maybe less. And a CIA asset somewhere in that canyon who was running out of both time and luck. Ryan Cole was reloading next to him. His hands moved with the automatic precision of a man who had performed this action so many times it had stopped being something he did and become something he simply was. But his eyes were moving in a way Marcus had not seen from Ryan in years. Scanning, reassessing, recalculating. That dropped rifle was still somewhere in the back of both their minds. Marcus knew it. Ryan knew Marcus knew it. Neither of them said anything about it because there was nothing to say about it out here that would not cost them time they did not have. Emily, Marcus said into his mic, Eastern element status. They are moving, she said immediately, as if she had been waiting for exactly that question. 12 individuals breaking from the primary position. They are splitting into 2 elements. 6 moving south along the ridge to flank your current position. 6 holding at the canyon entrance. The 6 holding are not defensive. They are a reaction force. They are waiting for the flanking element to push you into the open. Timeline. 4 minutes before the flanking element reaches an angle where they can engage you from above. Maybe 3.5. Tyler Grant leaned close to Marcus. We cannot stay in this wash. I know. We also cannot move without running into one of those 2 elements. I know that too. Ethan Ross looked up from where he had been working on a shallow graze across his own forearm, something he had apparently sustained during the initial contact and had not mentioned to anyone. He wrapped it with 2 strips of tape, bit the end off, and said, "What about the canyon entrance? If the 6 at the entrance are a reaction force and not a blocking force, there might be a gap between their position and the southern ridge wall." Marcus looked at Emily's last known position in his mind. "Emily, the canyon entrance. South wall. Is there a gap?" Silence for 2 seconds. The sound of wind, the distant sound of movement somewhere out in the darkness that Marcus's nervous system registered before his conscious mind did, his body already tensing, already preparing. "There is a gap," Emily said, "approximately 8 meters between the southernmost fighter at the entrance and the canyon wall. It is not a clean approach. You will be exposed for roughly 12 seconds crossing the open ground before the entrance. But the angle from the ridge position means they will not see you until you are already through." 12 seconds, Ryan said flatly. 12 seconds, Emily confirmed. Ryan looked at Marcus. "That is a long 12 seconds. "Everything out here is a long 12 seconds, Marcus said. He was already moving, already forming the sequence in his mind the way he always did, building the next 60 seconds like a structure, placing each piece in order, accounting for what he knew, and building margins for what he did not. "Tyler, you are on point. Ethan, you are covering R6. Ryan, you are with me on the asset extraction the moment we breach. Emily, I need you watching that entrance from your position. Anyone at that gap who is not us, you engage." "Understood," she said. "One thing. Make it fast. The 6 on the flank are moving faster than I estimated. You have closer to 2 minutes now, possibly less. Something changed their timeline. I do not know what yet. What changed it? A pause that lasted exactly long enough to feel dangerous. I think they have communication with someone inside the canyon. Someone who knows your position more precisely than the flanking element should." The word landed in the dry wash like a dropped stone. Someone inside the canyon. Marcus ran it through his mind in a fraction of a second. Asset compromised. Known compromised. But the implication Emily was describing was something more specific than that. Not just that Decker had been captured, but that someone was actively feeding position information to the hostile element in real time. "You think there is a spotter inside the canyon," Marcus said. "I think there is someone in there who knows exactly where you are," she said. "And I think that person has been talking to the people trying to kill you for longer than we have been on the ground tonight." Ryan said very quietly, "The asset." Nobody responded to that directly. Nobody had to. "Move," Marcus said. "You 2 minutes go." They came out of the dry wash fast and low, Tyler on point, moving with the particular aggressive patience of a man who knew that speed and violence of action were the only real answers to uncertainty. And they crossed the open ground toward the canyon entrance in a tight formation that took the 12-second exposure window and compressed it into something that felt from inside the experience like approximately 40 years. Rounds came from the ridge, not from the 6 at the entrance. From somewhere above and to the north, an angle that did not fit any of the positions Emily had described. And Marcus registered this wrongness even as he was running, filing it in the part of his brain that cataloged things that needed to be understood later, because right now, later was a luxury he could not afford. They made the gap. Tyler was through first, Marcus was through second, Ethan came through third with a round sparking off the canyon wall 6 inches above his head, and his expression not changing by a single degree, because Ethan Ross had made a personal policy decision sometime around his 3rd deployment that fear was information and information should be processed calmly. Ryan came through last. He came through fast, faster than Marcus expected, and as he cleared the gap and pressed himself against the interior wall of the canyon, he grabbed Marcus by the shoulder and said in a voice stripped of every layer of performance and ego and certainty, "She was right. About all of it. Every single thing she flagged in that briefing." Marcus looked at him for exactly 1 second. "I know." "I dropped her rifle, Marcus." "I know that too. If she..." "Ryan," he said it the same way he always said it. "Just the name. The conversation is over. We get Decker. We get out. Everything else after." Ryan nodded once, locked it down, moved. The canyon interior was darker than the open desert. The walls narrowed in places and opened in others, and the acoustics did things to sound that made distances feel wrong, made the echoes of gunfire seem to come from multiple directions simultaneously, when Marcus knew from Emily's positioning that the active shooters were behind them now. the flanking element having reached a position that gave them angles into the canyon mouth they had just cleared. 30 seconds of relative quiet, the specific held breath quality of a fight that is reorganizing itself. Then Emily's voice. The flanking element has reached the ridge. They are looking for you. They cannot see you yet. You have a window. Decker's position based on the last satellite overlay should be approximately 200 meters in left side, what looks like a natural alcove in the canyon wall. There was vehicle activity there in the imagery that suggested a holding position. 200 meters, Marcus said. Gusto. Emily said, and something in the single word changed the texture of the communication in a way that Marcus noticed immediately. Not alarm. Something more specific than alarm. I have a new contact. High position north ridge above the canyon. Single individual. He has been static since before we inserted. I missed him initially because he was not moving at all. He has communication equipment. That is your spotter, Marcus said. That is my spotter, she confirmed. He has a direct line of sight into the canyon. He knows exactly where you are. Everything the flanking element knows he is telling them. Tyler said from 4 meters ahead, "Can you take him?" The pause that followed was not hesitation. It was calculation. Marcus knew the difference because he had worked with enough snipers over enough years to understand that the silence of a sniper thinking is one of the most precise sounds in the world. Every millisecond of it is being used. Range is acceptable, Emily said. Wind is workable. The problem is elevation angle. He is above my position by approximately 30 meters, and the shot requires me to compensate for both wind and angle simultaneously on a target that is partially concealed by the ridgeline. I can see his communication equipment in his right shoulder. That is what I have. Is it enough? Marcus asked. Another pause. It is enough, she said, but the moment I fire, every hostile element in this valley is going to know exactly where I am. I lose my concealment. They will move to engage my position. Marcus stopped walking. Then we do not take the shot until we have Decker and we are moving for extraction. Understood, but you need to move faster. He is actively directing the flanking element. Every second I do not take that shot, they are getting closer to an angle where they can engage you inside the canyon. How long? Marcus said. 6 minutes, maybe 7. We will be back out in 5. Silence. Then move faster, she said. They moved faster. Decker was where the imagery suggested he would be. 210 meters in left wall, a natural depression in the rock that had been reinforced with rough materials into something that functioned as a holding cell. He was zip-tied to a metal stake driven into the ground, and when Marcus came around the corner and put a light on him, his face was a portrait of someone who had been expecting this moment for long enough that the relief of it arriving had not yet caught up to the rest of his nervous system. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the team behind Marcus. He looked at his own wrists. You have a knife, he said. We have a knife, Marcus said. Tyler was already cutting. How many of them are out there? Enough, Marcus said. Can you walk? I can run, Decker said. And when Tyler cut the last restraint and Decker stood up, he did not wobble. He squared his shoulders and looked Marcus directly in the eye and said, There is a man on the North Ridge who has been watching this whole canyon since yesterday morning. He is not just a spotter. He is the command element. Every fighter out there takes orders from him. Marcus looked at him steadily. We know about him. Decker blinked. You have eyes on him. We have someone who has eyes on him. Then for the love of God, Decker said, have them take the shot. He is the reason this whole operation is compromised. He is the reason I am zip-tied to a stake in a canyon. He was briefed on this rescue before your team even lifted off. The implication dropped into the air between them like something physical. Briefed before they lifted off. There is a leak, Marcus said. There has been a leak for 6 weeks, Decker said. I found it. That is why they grabbed me. Whatever you do tonight, do not let that man on the ridge make another call. Marcus was already on his mic. Emily. I heard it, she said. She had been on comms throughout. I have been listening. Can you take him now? I have been ready for 4 minutes, she said. The briefest pause. Then take him, Marcus said. What happened in the next 11 seconds was something that Marcus Walker would describe differently every time he told the story because language had a hard time holding the shape of it. He heard nothing from Emily's position. 2 miles of distance and terrain absorbed her shot completely. The first indication he had that she had fired was the sound of commotion from the direction of the North Ridge shouting that shifted instantly from coordinated to confused, and then his earpiece carrying her voice. Target down, she said, simply, exactly that. Ryan Cole, standing 3 meters away, with Decker between him and the canyon wall, turned his head toward Marcus and said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. Because Ryan Cole had spent 21 years in the teams developing the internal architecture of a man who always knew the right call and always made it. And right now, every load-bearing piece of that architecture was being quietly and visibly restructured around the fact that he had dropped a 19-year-old girl's rifle on a concrete floor and called her a child. And she had just taken a shot in the dark at a partially concealed target 2 miles away at a compound angle with crosswind, and she had made it look like arithmetic. We move, Marcus said. They moved. The canyon behind them was louder now, the hostile element reacting to the loss of their command signal, the way any organized force reacts when the thread holding it together gets cut, not with immediate collapse, but with a frantic, disorganized attempt to reestablish structure, fighters shouting to each other, positions, shifting the coordinated pressure of the ambush beginning to fragment at its edges. Emily was already adjusting. 2 fighters moving to cover the canyon exit, she said. I am engaging. 2 shots, 4 seconds apart. The precise and hurried rhythm of someone who had done this so many times in training that the real version felt like muscle memory. Both fighters down. Exit is clear, she said. You have approximately 90 seconds before the flanking element reorients and covers that angle. Move through and break left toward the secondary LZ. I am shifting position. You are shifting, Marcus said. Moving hard now, Decker between him and Ryan Tyler 10 meters ahead and already at the canyon mouth. They will have your position. They will have my old position, she said. I am not going to be there. And then something happened that nobody on the team had anticipated, and that Emily, for all her preparation and perception and extraordinary ability to read a battlefield, had also not fully accounted for. The North Ridge exploded. Not literally, but close enough. 4 fighters not from the main flanking element, but from a separate reserve group that had been held back specifically for this contingency, came over the North Ridge line simultaneously and opened fire toward Emily's last known position. They were close. Closer than they should have been able to get without her seeing them first, which meant one of 2 things. Either she had already moved or they had found her before she moved. Marcus ran. Emily, status, right now. Static. Emily, more static. 3 seconds, 4. Then her voice slightly different, slightly tighter the first time all night that something other than absolute calm had touched the edges of her words. I am fine. I moved 30 seconds before they reached my position, but they are barred between me and my secondary location. I am working on it. Are you taking fire? A pause that lasted 1 second too long to be comfortable. Intermittently, Ryan was already breaking from the group. Marcus grabbed his arm. Where are you going? She is taking fire, Ryan said. She said she is fine. She said intermittently, Ryan said. That means they are shooting at her, and occasionally they are shooting close. That is not fine, Marcus. That is a 19-year-old on her first deployment getting shot at by 4 fighters on a ridge and telling us she is fine because she does not want to be the reason we do not get the asset out. The accuracy of this landed somewhere in Marcus's chest that he did not have time to acknowledge. We get Decker to the LZ, Marcus said. Then we Emily. Ryan was already on his own mic, cutting across. Talk to me. I need your exact position. A pause, then very precisely she gave it. Ryan Cole looked at Marcus Walker for exactly 1 second. Something passed between them that had no words in any language Marcus knew. Then Ryan turned and moved back into the darkness toward the North Ridge at a pace that Marcus had not seen from him in 2 years. The kind of pace that a man produces when the accounting is done and the debt is clear, and the only remaining question is how fast he can move. Tyler, Marcus said, get Decker to the LZ, call the birds. And you, Tyler said. Marcus was already moving after Ryan. I am going to go make sure my chief marksman does not get himself killed doing something that is either completely stupid or the most decent thing I have ever seen him do, possibly both simultaneously. Tyler Grant watched them go for exactly 1 second. Yeah, he said quietly to nobody in particular. Okay then. And he moved toward the LZ. 2 miles away and closer by the second, Emily Brooks had her back against a rock formation she had identified as a secondary fallback position 40 minutes before any of this started. because that was how her mind worked. Always 3 steps ahead, always building the next position before she needed it, and she had 4 fighters trying to find her in the dark, and she had already accounted for 3 of them through her scope. The 4th one she had not found yet. That was the one that concerned her. Her grandfather had told her once many years ago in the particular direct way of old Marines, who believed that the most useful things you could give someone were the things that were true, that the fighter you cannot see is always the most dangerous one on the field. Not because the invisible is necessarily more skilled, but because your mind fills the absence with fear, and fear is the worst advisor you will ever have. She slowed her breathing. She did not let her mind fill the absence with fear. She let the darkness be what it was. Dark, quiet, full of information if you knew how to receive it, and she listened to it with every sense she had, and she waited for the 4th fighter to tell her where he was. He did, not by moving, by breathing, the specific, careful, controlled breathing of someone who was also trying not to be heard. 4 meters to her left, she was already turning. She was already turning when he moved. The 4th fighter came out of the dark 4 meters to her left, and he was faster than she had expected from the sound of his breathing, and the first thing that hit her was not a bullet, but his shoulder full force driving into her right side and spinning her off the rock formation and onto the ground. Her rifle went one direction, her earpiece went another. The night sky tilted above her, and she had approximately 1 second to process all of this before he was on top of her. He was bigger than her, most people were. He outweighed her by at least 60 pounds, and he had the particular aggressive certainty of someone who had done this before, who had been in this specific situation before and knew exactly how it ended. His hands went for her throat. She let him get there. Not because she had no choice, because she had calculated in the half-second available to her that letting him commit his weight and his hands to that specific action would give her the angle she needed on his left side, and she drove her elbow into his ribs at the exact moment he thought he had her secured, and she felt something give under the impact, and he made a sound that was not quite a word and released pressure on her throat for exactly the fraction of a second she needed. She used it. 30 seconds later, she was standing, and he was not. She found her earpiece in the dark by feel fitted. It back found her rifle 3 meters away against a rock and checked it the same way she always checked it. The same sequence her grandfather had drilled into her, starting when she was 9 years old, beginning at the action and moving outward, never skipping a step, never assuming. Emily, Ryan Cole's voice in her ear, breathing hard, moving. Emily, answer me right now. I am here, she said. The relief that came through the transmission was not something Ryan Cole would have wanted her to hear. It was too unguarded for a man who had spent 2 decades building the architecture of someone who was never unguarded. But it was there. Are you hit? No. The 4 fighters on the ridge? Handled, she said. A pause. All 4, Kino. All 4. Another pause. Longer. I am 40 meters below your position on the north face. I can see your ridge from here. I can see your heat signature, she said. You should not be here. The asset needs cover at the LZ. Tyler has the asset. Marcus is with me. She processed this. You both left the extraction to come to the ridge. Yes, Ryan said. That was not tactically sound. No, he said. It was not. She understood what he was not saying. She had understood it from the moment he broke from the group because she had been watching through her scope. She had seen him move. She had tracked him with the same precision. She tracked everything on this battlefield. And she had understood then what the movement meant, even if she had not had time to think about it fully until now. Get back to the LZ, she said. I am mobile. I am fine. Get back. Emily. Chief Cole. She used his rank for the first time, deliberately. I need you at that LZ more than I need you on this ridge. Please. A long silence. The sound of breathing and movement and the distant sounds of a battlefield reorganizing itself. Then Marcus's voice, quiet, dry, with the particular quality of a man who was simultaneously exasperated and something close to moved. She is telling you to go do your job, Ryan. I heard her, Ryan said. Then go do your job. 30 seconds of silence. Then Ryan's voice stripped of everything except what was real. You did good out here tonight, Brooks. I need you to know that I said that. She did not answer immediately. She was already moving, already repositioning, already scanning the valley below for the next thing that needed her attention because the battle was not over and sentiment was something you processed after not during. "Thank you," she said finally. "Now move." They moved, and Emily Brooks climbed back to her primary scope and looked out over a valley that was burning in 4 separate places and tried to understand what she was seeing because something had changed in the last 6 minutes, and she had not yet identified exactly what. The hostile element was not retreating, it was consolidating. That was wrong. A force that had lost its command signal, lost 4 fighters on the North Ridge, lost its primary spotter, should be fragmenting, should be pulling back, should be making the rational calculation that the cost of continuing this engagement had exceeded the potential benefit. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked in every after-action review she had studied, every tactical analysis she had absorbed in the years of preparation that had brought her to this ridge on this night. They were not retreating. They were pulling inward, pulling tight, forming a dense defensive perimeter around the canyon entrance. She ran the numbers. 20-plus fighters still operational, heavy weapons still active, and they were organizing around the canyon entrance rather than retreating from it, which meant one thing. They were not trying to prevent extraction anymore. They were trying to prevent something from leaving the canyon that had not left yet, something more important than the asset, something that the loss of their command element had not changed their orders about. Something was still in that canyon. "Marcus," she said into the mic, and the tone of her voice brought him to a full stop she could almost feel through the transmission. "Talk," he said. "The enemy element is not retreating. They are establishing a defensive perimeter around the canyon entrance. This is not a rearguard action. They are protecting something inside." Silence for 2 seconds. "Decker said there was a leak," Marcus said. 6 weeks of compromise. That means 6 weeks of material, documents, contacts, network structure. "If Decker was their proof of the leak, then what he had on him is the evidence," she said. "If that evidence leaves this canyon tonight, someone very important to this network goes to prison." "So they are not trying to stop us anymore," Marcus said. "They are trying to stop what Decker is carrying," she said. "Does Decker know what he has on him?" She heard Marcus turn, heard him address Decker directly, heard the muffled exchange, and then Marcus was back on the line and his voice was carrying something new in it. Not alarm exactly, but the focused urgency of a man who has just understood that the problem is larger and more specific than he believed 30 seconds ago. "He has a drive," Marcus said. A physical drive, 6 weeks of network intelligence, names, locations, operational timelines. He said command told him to protect it at all costs. Then the 50-plus fighters who are currently forming a wall between you and your helicopters know about the drive," Emily said. "And they will not move, not for casualties, not for the loss of their commander, not for anything. Because whatever is on that drive is worth more to their network than this entire operation." Tyler's voice cut in from the LZ. "The birds are 12 minutes out. We need that path clear in 12 minutes or they circle and we lose the window." 12 minutes. Emily looked at the defensive perimeter below her, counted firing positions, mapped angles, ran the math the way her grandfather had taught her. Not emotionally, not hopefully, but honestly, every variable in its proper place, every margin accounted for. It was not good math. 20-plus fighters in a tight defensive formation with overlapping fields of fire and heavy weapons covering the 2 most viable approach corridors to the LZ. In 12 minutes, without significant disruption to that perimeter, Tyler Grant and CIA asset Decker were going to be sitting at an LZ that the hostile element had full eyes on, and Marcus and Ryan were going to be caught between the canyon and that perimeter with no good options. "Marcus," she said. "I see the same picture you see," he said. "Tell me something I can use." She had already found it. She had found it 40 seconds ago, and she had been sitting with it because what she was looking at required her to make a decision that was not hers to make unilaterally, and she wanted to be certain before she said it out loud. "There is a secondary commander," she said. "I missed him earlier because he was positioned behind the primary command element. When the primary went down, he took control. He is the reason the perimeter is holding. He is the one who shifted from offensive to defensive posture. He is the one who identified the drive as the priority." "Where?" Marcus said. "Southern canyon wall, elevated position, 40 meters above the canyon floor. He has a direct communication line to every position in that perimeter. He is coordinating everything happening down there right now in real time." "Can you take him?" She had already run the shot. Twice. The range was manageable. The angle was steep, but workable. The wind had shifted in the last 4 minutes and was now coming from a direction that actually simplified the calculation rather than complicating it. The problem was not the shot. If I take him, she said, the perimeter does not automatically collapse. A force this size, this disciplined, will absorb the loss and someone else will step up within 2 to 3 minutes. What it does give you is a window, a 2 to 3 minute window where the coordination breaks down and the response is disorganized. 2 to 3 minutes is enough, Marcus said immediately. Ryan and I hit the perimeter on the eastern side while they were reorganizing. Tyler moves Decker to the LZ. You cover the western corridor so they cannot collapse the perimeter inward before the birds land. That is 3 separate simultaneous actions with 2 operators, 1 medic, 1 compromised asset, and 1 sniper covering a corridor that is 400 meters wide, Ryan said. Yes, Marcus said. The pause. Okay, Ryan said. What is wrong with us? Take the shot, Emily, Marcus said. On your call. She settled behind the scope. She let the world reduce itself to the circle of glass in front of her eye and the information it contained. Wind, range, elevation, the angle of the shot, and what it would do to the bullet's path over distance. The position of the target in the 2-inch window of clear angle she had between his cover and the rock formation above him. She had made harder shots. Not many, but some. She found her breathing, slowed it, let the pause between heartbeats open up until it felt like a room she could step into. Her grandfather's voice somewhere in the architecture of her memory. You are not trying to hit a target, you are trying to tell the truth. The rifle is just how the truth travels. She pulled the trigger. The secondary commander dropped. Below the perimeter shuddered. Not visibly, not dramatically, but she could see it through the scope the way a conversation stops when someone says something that changes the meaning of everything that came before. Fighters looking to each other. Radio traffic spiking. She could not hear it, but she could read the body language of men receiving communications that did not make sense. The particular disorganized urgency of a system that has just lost the signal it was organizing around. Window is open, she said. Go. Marcus and Ryan went. What happened in the next 90 seconds was the kind of controlled violence that looks from the outside like chaos, but is from the inside deeply structured. Marcus hit the eastern perimeter at the exact point where 2 adjacent firing positions had the worst overlap, covered the gap she had identified from 2 miles away, 20 minutes before the fight even reached this stage. Ryan came in from a slightly different angle, tighter, more aggressive, using the confusion of the reorganizing perimeter to close distance before the fighters he was engaging had fully processed what was happening. She watched it through her scope, called adjustments into the mic. Not commands, information. The angle of a fighter moving to flank Marcus from the left. The position of a heavy weapon being repositioned toward Ryan. The timing of a gap in the western corridor coverage that Tyler could use to move Decker another 40 meters closer to the LZ. She fired 6 more times in those 90 seconds. Every shot placed where it needed to be. Not dramatically. Not with any excess. The minimum necessary to keep the people she was responsible for alive. Tyler's voice. Moving, Decker is mobile, LZ is 80 meters. Ryan's voice tighter, closer to the edge. I need the Western machine guns suppressed. She had already identified it, had been tracking it for 40 seconds, waiting for Ryan to need it. She took the shot. The machine gun went silent. Thank you, Ryan said, and the way he said it contained everything that had happened between them in the last several hours. The dropped rifle, the laughing in the hangar, the canyon, the ridge, all of it compressed into 2 words delivered in the dark to a woman he could not see who had just saved his life for the 3rd time tonight. You are welcome, she said, and meant it without any edge at all. Marcus's voice, perimeter is breaking. Eastern positions are pulling back. Ryan, push through now. Ryan pushed through. The perimeter broke. Not completely, not immediately, but the eastern section collapsed under the pressure of 2 operators hitting it at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right information, and the collapse spread westward the way a crack spreads through glass, finding the weakest points following the lines of least resistance, and within 4 minutes of Emily's shot. The organized defensive wall that had been holding the LZ corridor closed was a disorganized collection of fighters trying to regroup in the dark without a commander to tell them where. Tyler reached the LZ. I have the asset, he said. LZ is hot, but manageable. Birds are 8 minutes out. Where is everyone? Coming, Marcus said. She tracked Marcus and Ryan through her scope as they broke from the collapsed perimeter and moved toward the LZs. And she held her breath in the way she did when the math was done and the variables were out of her hands, and all that remained was the time between the last thing you could control and the moment you would know whether it had been enough. They were 60 meters from the LZ when the night changed again. A sound she had not heard yet tonight. Not rifle fire, not a machine gun, something heavier. She identified it before she fully processed it, before her conscious mind caught up with the part of her that was always 3 steps ahead. An RPG team on the southern ridge was showing position she had not identified, position that had been quiet and dark and patient throughout the entire engagement, not firing, not moving, waiting for exactly this moment, the moment when the extraction was almost complete and the team was in the open, and the drive was 40 meters from a helicopter that would carry it out of reach forever. She had 4 seconds. She knew she had 4 seconds because she had studied RPG engagement timelines, and the weapon was already on the shooter's shoulder. And the moment between shouldering and firing on a static target at that range was 4 seconds. If he was experienced, and he was experienced, she could see it in the way he held the weapon, the economy of his movement, the absence of hesitation. 4 seconds. The angle from her position to his was 37 degrees elevation change on a target now in full movement because he was stepping in his firing stance, and she needed to lead him slightly and account for the elevation, and the wind had shifted again in the last 3 minutes, and she had not had time to fully recalibrate. She did the recalibration in the available time, which was not 4 seconds anymore. It was 2. She fired. The RPG team went down. The rocket discharged into the ground 8 meters in front of the shooter's position, the trigger pull happening in the final reflex of a falling man, the explosion close enough to throw dirt and rock across the southern quarter, but far enough from Marcus and Ryan that they were already moving, already reacting, already covering the last 40 meters to the LZ in the particular committed sprint of men who have decided that speed is the only remaining variable they can influence. She was shaking, not from fear, from the specific biochemical aftermath of 2 seconds of absolute precision under conditions that did not permit error. Her hands were steady, her breathing was controlled, but somewhere beneath the control, her body was reminding her that she was human, that what she had just done existed at the outer edge of what human beings were capable of, and that acknowledgement had a physical cost. She let herself shake for exactly 5 seconds. Then she found the next position through her scope and went back to work. Tyler's voice, "Birds are 4 minutes out. I have everyone. I have the asset. Marcus, Ryan, get to the LZ. We are almost home." Marcus's voice, slightly breathless, the first time all night she had heard effort in it. 30 seconds. "Emily," Marcus said. "Here," she said. "Are you mobile? Can you reach the extraction point?" She had already been calculating this. Her secondary extraction route had been compromised by the repositioning of the hostile element over the last 20 minutes. The primary route was workable but exposed. She would need to move fast, and she would need to move now because in 4 minutes, the helicopters would be on the ground, and in 6 minutes they would lift off whether she was there or not. Not because anyone would choose to leave her, but because the drive and the asset and the lives of 4 operators could not be held hostage to the timeline of a single person, no matter who that person was. She already knew this. She had accepted it as a condition of the role before she ever boarded the transport helicopter. "I am mobile," she said. "I will be there." "If you are not there to there in 5 minutes," Marcus started. "I will be there in 4, she said. She broke from her position and moved. She moved through darkness that she had been studying for hours across terrain she had memorized from imagery and confirmed with her own eyes through the scope using the map she had built in her mind over the course of the night. Every fold in the ground, every covered approach, every position that offered concealment along the route she had pre-planned and adjusted twice since insertion. She moved faster than she had moved all night. Her rifle was across her back. Her hands were free. Her mind was running the route ahead and the timeline simultaneously, and both were tight, but both were viable, and she was not afraid she was focused, which was the thing her grandfather had always said was the difference between someone who survived hard moments and someone who did not. Fear tells you that you might die. Focus tells you what to do about it. She ran. The LZ was ahead. She could hear the approaching helicopters, now that distinctive sound building from the south, and she could see the shape of her team in the darkness. 4 figures and one more that would be Decker, and she ran toward them across the last 100 meters of open ground, with her rifle bouncing on her back and her lungs pulling hard, and the helicopters getting louder and louder and louder. She was at the LZ with 40 seconds to spare. Ryan Cole saw her first. He said nothing. He just reached out and grabbed her arm as she came in and held on for a moment. One brief moment of contact that communicated everything that words in the dark would have fumbled. And then he let go, and they were both moving toward the helicopter, and the rotors were overhead, and the ground was falling away beneath them. She looked down through the open door at the valley below. Fires in 4 places. Hostile elements still visible, still moving, still trying to regroup around a command structure that was no longer there. The canyon that had nearly swallowed all of them receding, getting smaller, becoming something that could be looked at from a distance. She felt the shaking start again in her hands. Let it happen this time. She had earned it. Marcus sat down across from her. He looked at her for a long moment, the way he had looked at her file 3 times on the transport down, trying to reconcile 2 different pictures of the same thing. "How are you doing?" he said. She thought about it honestly. "I'm okay," she said. "Ask me again in an hour." He nodded, leaned back, closed his eyes. Decker was next to Tyler, holding the drive against his chest with both hands, his eyes open and fixed on something that was not in the helicopter. Processing. The way people process when the immediate danger has passed and the brain begins cautiously to examine what just happened. Ryan Cole was at the far end of the helicopter, exactly where he had positioned himself on the flight and as far from Emily as the interior permitted. But this time he was not looking away from her. He was looking directly at her with an expression that Marcus would later describe when someone asked him about it as the face of a man taking an honest inventory. The helicopter banked south and the valley disappeared from view, and Emily Brooks sat in the dark with her grandfather's rifle across her knees and her hands finally steady again, and she did not feel triumphant. She did not feel vindicated. She did not feel any of the things she had sometimes imagined she might feel after a night like this one. She just felt the weight of what it had cost, all of it, every shot, every decision, every second in which the wrong choice would have meant someone she was responsible for did not come home. That weight was not a burden. It was information. She filed it carefully. She would need it later. Because there would be a later. She already knew that. The drive Decker was holding against his chest contained 6 weeks of intelligence that was going to unravel a network. And unraveling a network always created consequences, and consequences always created operations, and operations always needed people who could see what everyone else missed. She closed her eyes and let the helicopter carry her home. The helicopter touched down at the forward operating base at 22 minutes past midnight. Nobody spoke during the landing. The team had been running on adrenaline for the better part of 4 hours, and the particular silence that falls when adrenaline finally releases its grip is not a comfortable silence. It is the silence of people who are beginning to understand in real time exactly how close everything had been. The math of survival is always clearest in retrospect. When you are inside it, you are moving too fast to see the full shape of it. When it is over and you are sitting in a helicopter that is descending toward lights and concrete, and people who are not trying to kill you, the shape becomes visible all at once, and the visibility of it hits differently for different people. Tyler Grant stared at his hands for most of the descent. Ethan Ross had fallen asleep with his head against the hull, the trained sleep of a combat medic who had learned to take unconsciousness wherever it was offered, because the body needed it and the opportunity was never guaranteed. Decker had not released the drive from his chest the entire flight. His fingers were white around it. Marcus watched him and thought about what 6 weeks of living inside a compromised network did to a person. The particular loneliness of knowing that the people hunting you knew everything you knew and carrying that knowledge alone. Ryan Cole had not taken his eyes off Emily for the last 40 minutes of the flight, not in a way that made anyone uncomfortable, not with the aggressive scrutiny he had brought to the hangar 8 hours ago. With the specific quiet attention of a man who was conducting a review of himself using another person as the instrument of measurement and finding the results instructive in ways that were not entirely flattering. Emily had not noticed, or if she had noticed, she had made the professional decision to treat it as background information rather than something requiring a response. She had her rifle across her knees and she was doing the same thing she always did after a shooting event, working through the sequence in her mind, not reliving it emotionally but auditing it technically, asking herself where her decisions had been sound and where they could have been better, and filing the answers in the part of her memory that would inform the next time. There was always a next time. That was something her grandfather had told her early and often. There is always a next time, Emily. The work does not end. You end eventually, but the work does not. So do it right while you have the opportunity. The helicopter settled, the rotors wound down, the crew chief slid the door open, and the desert night air came in cooler now, carrying the particular smell of the base that was different from the smell of the open desert fuel and machinery, and the faint chemical residue of 100 operations conducted from this same patch of ground. Marcus was the first one out. He turned and offered Decker a hand, and Decker took it and stepped down onto the tarmac with the careful movements of someone whose body was registering injuries that adrenaline had been masking for hours. Ryan came out next, then Tyler, then Ethan, who woke up in the last 30 seconds of descent with the complete immediate alertness of someone whose nervous system had never fully disengaged, only stepped back to a lower level of readiness. Emily came out last. She stepped onto the tarmac and stood still for a moment with her rifle case in the night air and the sound of the base around her, and she took one long breath in and let it out slowly the way her grandfather had taught her to end any session at the range, any training evolution, any moment of high-focus work. You breathe it out, he had said. You breathe out what it cost you, and you breathe in what comes next. You do not carry the weight of what is finished into what is beginning. That is how good people break. She breathed it out. Then she followed her team toward the debrief building. The intelligence officer waiting for them inside the building was a woman named Carver. Mid-40s, the kind of precise and deliberate presence that suggested she had been in rooms like this one many times and had developed strong opinions about how they should be run. She looked at the team as they filed in, assessed Decker with professional thoroughness, and then looked at the drive in his hands with the expression of someone who has been waiting for a specific piece of information for a very long time. The drive intact, she said. Intact, Decker said. He held it out. She took it without ceremony, which told Marcus something about her. People who understood what things were worth did not perform appreciation. They simply secured the asset and moved forward. Sit down, she said to the room. All of you, I need the full sequence. The debrief lasted 90 minutes. Carver asked questions with the precision of a surgeon, cutting directly to the specific information she needed without preamble or detour. And the team answered with the particular economy of people who have learned that a debrief is not a story. It is a technical accounting, and sentiment is a thing you bring to the version you tell your friends, not the version you tell intelligence. Except that partway through the debrief, something happened that changed the texture of the room. Carver asked about the North Ridge shots, the command element, the secondary commander, the RPG team. She asked about ranges, angles, conditions, timelines. She asked with the same precise neutrality she had brought to everything else. And as Emily answered each question, Carver's expression shifted by small degrees, almost imperceptibly, in the manner of someone receiving information that is confirming a hypothesis they had been unwilling to state aloud before the data was in. When Emily finished the sequence, Carver set down her pen. The RPG team shot, she said, 2-second window, elevation change of 37 degrees. Wind shift in the preceding 3 minutes that you accounted for in the available time. Yes, Emily said, you had not recalibrated for the wind shift. I did not have time for a full recalibration. I did an accelerated calculation based on the observed shift and applied it. In 2 seconds. Yes. Carver looked at her for a moment without speaking. Then she looked at Marcus. Then she looked back at Emily. How old are you? She said. 19, Emily said. Another moment of silence. I have been running field operations for 16 years, Carver said. I have worked with snipers on 4 continents. I have read the file on every long-range engagement of record for the last decade. She paused. What you did tonight is going to require a separate addendum to the after-action report because our existing category structures do not have a field for some of what you are describing. The room was very quiet. Ryan Cole, sitting 2 seats from Emily, looked at the table. I want to say something, he said. Carver looked at him. Off the record, he said. Carver considered this for approximately 2 seconds. Then she closed her notebook. Off the record. Ryan looked at Emily. The look lasted long enough that everyone in the room felt the weight of it, the specific discomfort of watching a man confront something real about himself in a public setting without the protection of procedure or deflection. "I dropped your rifle," he said. Emily looked at him steadily. "I dropped it on a concrete floor in front of your team, and I laughed at you, and I called you a child, and I made every decision I could make that told you your presence on this operation was a problem, and your judgment was worthless." He stopped, restarted. "I have been in this business for 21 years, and I pride myself on being the kind of operator who calls it straight, who sees what is real and responds to what is real. And tonight I looked at you and I saw a kid with a rifle instead of seeing what you actually were. That is not calling it straight. That is the opposite of that." The room waited. Emily said nothing for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was the same voice she had used all night, steady, without performance. "You went back up the ridge," she said. "That does not fix what I did in the hangar." "No," she agreed, "it does not fix it. But it tells me something about who you are when the noise stops and the only thing left is what is real. And what was real on that ridge was that you came back." She paused. "I am not looking for an apology, Chief Cole. I am looking for the next mission to go better than this one. That is all I am ever looking for." Ryan held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he nodded once, the particular nod of a man who has received something more honest than he deserved and knows it. Carver opened her notebook again. "Back on the record," she said. "We have a problem." Marcus straightened. "The drive. The drive is intact and the intelligence is extraordinary. 6 weeks of network data. We have names, we have locations, we have operational timelines. This is going to dismantle a significant infrastructure in this region." She paused. "That is not the problem. The problem is what the drive also contains." The temperature of the room changed. "Decker," Carver said. Decker looked up from where he had been sitting with his hands folded on the table, very still, the way a person sits when they are waiting for a specific thing to be said, and they have been waiting for it for a long time. "You want to tell them," she said. It was not a question. He looked at the team. He looked at each of them individually, the way a man looks at people he owes something to and is about to prove it. "The leak," he said. "The intelligence that compromised this operation before it launched. I told you in the canyon that I found it 6 weeks ago. I told you it went high enough that they grabbed me to keep it quiet." He stopped, looked at his hands. "I did not tell you how high." Marcus felt the particular stillness that comes before something large. "How high?" he said. "High enough that the people who ordered this rescue operation knew about this rescue operation before it was ordered," Decker said. "High enough that the defensive preparation Emily identified in the satellite imagery, the prepared fighting positions, the coordinated ambush, the reserve RPG team that nobody identified in pre-mission intelligence, none of that was an accident. None of that was enemy initiative. Someone told them you were coming. Someone with full operational awareness told them the timeline, the insertion point, the team composition, and the objective." The silence that followed was the kind that changes rooms. Not the silence of people processing information, but the silence of people understanding that the information they are processing has consequences that extend far beyond the room they are sitting in. Tyler said very quietly, "Someone burned the mission." "Someone burned 6 missions," Decker said. "This one and 5 before it. Every operation that touched this network in the last 8 weeks was compromised before it launched. I have the documentation. It is on the drive." Marcus looked at Carver. "You already knew this." "I suspected," she said, "and the drive confirms it." "Then why did you run this operation through the same channels as the others?" Carver looked at him with an expression that answered the question before she did. "Because this team was selected specifically because it was not run through the same channels. Your insertion was booked under a logistics cover. Your team composition was assembled 48 hours before launch through a compartmentalized authorization that bypassed the standard operational pipeline." She paused. "Whoever the leak is, they did not know about this mission in advance. They knew about every other mission. They did not know about this one." "Then why were the fighting positions prepared?" Ryan said. "If they did not know we were coming, why was the canyon set up the way it was?" "Because they knew someone was coming eventually," Carver said. "They did not know when or who. They had been prepared for any extraction attempt for the last 3 weeks. What Emily identified in that satellite imagery was not foreknowledge of this specific mission. It was a prepared defensive posture maintained against the possibility of any mission. Emily, who had been quiet since Ryan's statement, said, "That means the ambush was not designed for us specifically. It was designed for whoever came, and it very nearly worked anyway." "Yes," Carver said. Which means Emily continued, and Marcus could see her working through it in real time, the same precision she brought to a shot applied to the logic of the situation. "The network we were running against tonight is more capable than any previous intelligence assessment indicated. They did not need foreknowledge of our specific operation to nearly destroy it. They prepared a system that would have destroyed almost any operation run against them." "Also, yes," Carver said. "In the 6 weeks of intelligence on that drive," Emily said, "the names and locations and timelines. If the drive had not made it out tonight, then the network continues operating," Carver said. "The leak continues operating, and the next team sent into this region faces the same prepared system with even more experience behind it." The full weight of what had been at stake settled into the room in a way that it had not during the mission itself, because during the mission there had been no time for weight, only movement. Now there was time, and the weight was considerable. Marcus looked at his team. Tyler, who had carried Decker across 400 meters of contested ground without losing the asset or his composure. Ethan, who had treated his own wound in the field without mentioning it to anyone, and was now sitting with the careful stillness of someone managing more pain than they were acknowledging. Ryan, who had gone back up a ridge for a 19-year-old he had spent 8 hours dismissing and had never once calculated whether it was worth it. Had simply gone because it was the right thing, and he was under everything a man who did the right thing when the noise finally stopped. And Emily, who had seen what nobody else had seen and said what nobody wanted to hear and been right about every single thing and asked for nothing in return except to be given the same weight as anyone else in the room. "What happens now?" Marcus asked Carver. "Now," she said, "the drive goes to a team of analysts who will spend the next 72 hours extracting and verifying the intelligence. Simultaneously, a separate investigation begins into the leak. That investigation will be run by a compartmentalized unit with no connection to any of the compromised operational channels." "And us," Ryan said. Carver looked at him for a moment. "You are stood down for 48 hours. After that, you will be called in for individual interviews as part of the leak investigation. Not because you are suspects, because you were the team that made it out with the evidence, which means you are the people this investigation begins with." The team absorbed this. Then Decker spoke again. His voice had changed since the debrief began. The careful, contained quality of a man managing acute stress had shifted towards something that was still controlled, but was no longer performed. He sounded tired, genuinely deeply tired. The kind of tired that does not come from one night in a canyon, but from weeks of living inside a situation that had no clean exits. "I want to say something to all of you," he said, "and I do not know how to say it in a way that does not sound insufficient, because it is insufficient. What you did tonight," he stopped, started again. "I have been in this work for 19 years. I have been extracted twice before, both times by teams who were doing their jobs professionally and well. Both times I was grateful, and I said so, and I meant it." He looked at the table. "This was different. Tonight was different. And I think the reason it was different is sitting at the end of this table." He looked at Emily. She looked back at him with the same steadiness she brought to everything. "If that canyon had gone the way it was designed to go," he said, "if the perimeter had held and the helicopters had not been able to land, I would not have made it. The drive would not have made it. 6 weeks of work and every name on that drive would have stayed buried. Whatever happens with the investigation, whatever comes next, the reason there is a next is because of decisions made from a ridge 2 miles away by someone who saw everything that everyone else missed." He paused. "I want that on record." Carver opened her notebook and wrote something without comment. Marcus looked at Emily. She was looking at the table. Not from embarrassment, from the particular quality of focus that he had come to recognize over the course of the night as her way of processing things that were important, giving them the full weight of her attention rather than deflecting them. After a moment, she looked up. "The shot that mattered most tonight was not the longest one," she said. "It was not the hardest one, technically. The shot that mattered was the one I almost did not take because Ryan told me not to." Ryan looked at her. "The first command element," she said. When I had a 2-inch window and a crosswind and everyone in comms was telling me the odds were too low, that was the shot. Not because it was the hardest, because if I had listened to the voices telling me it was not possible, nothing else tonight would have happened the way it happened. She paused. My grandfather told me that the most dangerous moment in any decision is not when you face the impossible. It is when someone you respect tells you it is impossible. That is when most people stop. Not because the shot is actually impossible, but because doubt when it comes from someone you want to believe in feels like information. It feels like data, and it is not. It is just doubt. The room was very still. Ryan Cole said nothing. His jaw was working slightly the way a man's jaw works when something has landed precisely where he did not expect it to, and he is deciding whether to acknowledge the impact. He acknowledged it. That is going to stay with me, he said, for a long time. Good, Emily said. Not unkindly, not with any edge, just honestly. Carver closed her notebook. We are done here for tonight, 48 hours stand down, individual interviews beginning Thursday. She looked at the team one more time, the comprehensive professional assessment of someone cataloging what she had seen and what it was worth. For what it matters coming from this chair, in this room after 16 years of reading after-action reports and sitting across from teams that have done hard things in hard places. She stopped. Looked specifically at Emily. I have not read a field performance report that looks like this one is going to look. Not in 16 years. She gathered her materials and walked out. The team sat for a moment in the particular silence of a room that has held a significant amount of tension for a long time and has just had it released. Then Tyler Grant said, I need food. I need a significant amount of food immediately, and I need it to not be anything I have eaten in the field in the last 6 months. Ethan Ross said, there is a diner 20 minutes from base that is open 24 hours. I will drive, Tyler said. He stood up, looked around the table. Everyone is coming. This is not optional. You do not go through what we went through tonight and then eat alone in your quarters. That is not how this works. Marcus smiled for the first time since before the mission. It was a small smile, the kind that surfaces when something is genuinely funny and also genuinely true at the same time. He is right, Marcus said. Let's go. Ryan stood. He looked at Emily as she picked up her rifle case and slung it over her shoulder. He started to say something, stopped, started again. For what it is worth, he said, you handled that the way someone twice your age would have handled it. Better than someone twice your age would have handled it. Emily looked at him for a moment. Then she said, I know, but that is not the standard I was aiming for. Ryan blinked. The standard I was aiming for, she said, was the standard. Not adjusted for age, not adjusted for gender, not adjusted for number of deployments. Just the standard. The same standard you would hold yourself to. A pause. That is all I have ever wanted, to be held to the same standard. Ryan Cole, 21-year veteran chief marksman, the man who had walked into that hangar 8 hours ago, absolutely certain about the shape of the world and his place in it, looked at a 19-year-old woman who had spent the night saving his life and the lives of everyone around her, and he said very quietly, you have earned it. She nodded once, picked up her case, walked toward the door. At the threshold, she stopped, turned back, and for the first time all night, the absolute steadiness of her broke slightly not into weakness, but into something more human than the precision she had been running on for the last several hours. Something that looked, if you knew what you were looking for, like the face of someone who had been carrying a very heavy thing for a very long time and had just been given for one moment permission to set it down. Thank you, she said, to Ryan, to the room, to all of them. Then she walked out into the night. Marcus stood in the doorway and watched her go. Watched her walk across the tarmac with that rifle on her back, this young woman who had seen what nobody else could see and done what nobody else could do, and asked for nothing more than to be taken seriously. Behind him, Tyler was already talking about eggs. Ryan was putting on his jacket. Ethan was calculating whether the 20-minute drive was compatible with his current level of blood loss, determining that it was, and preparing to get into a vehicle. Marcus turned and looked at his team. These men he had bled with and argued with and trusted with his life on more occasions than he could count. These men who were not perfect and not without their blind spots and not always right about everything, but who, when the moment required it, were capable of something that the word courage only partially described. Something that looked more like honesty, the willingness to be wrong and to know it and to act accordingly. He thought about Emily on that ridge, the 2-second window, the wind shift she accounted for in the time available, the shot she made because she trusted herself when every other voice in the channel was telling her the odds were too low. He thought about Ryan going back up that ridge. He thought about what Decker had said. The reason there is a next is because of decisions made from a ridge 2 miles away by someone who saw everything everyone else missed. And Marcus Walker, 12 years in the team, survivor of more things than he was permitted to discuss, in polite company, walked out of that debrief room and into the desert night and felt something that he did not have a clean word for. Gratitude. That was the closest he could come. Pure, uncomplicated gratitude for the fact that he was walking, for the fact that his team was walking, for the fact that somewhere ahead of him, a 19-year-old with a custom rifle and her grandfather's patience was about to sit in a diner and eat eggs at 1 a.m. and not know how to fully understand yet what she had done tonight and what it meant. She would understand it later, he was certain of that. But tonight she was just going to eat eggs and let the weight of it settle and be for a few hours something other than extraordinary. He caught up with the rest of the team and did not say anything about any of this. Some things you carry quietly. That was another thing that teams had taught him. The drive was secured, the asset was safe. The names on that drive were going to unravel something significant. The investigation was going to find what it was looking for. And out there in the dark, in a valley that still had fires burning, in 4 places the shape of what had happened tonight was already becoming history. History that had almost gone a completely different way. Because of one person who refused to doubt herself when everyone around her was doing the doubting for her. Marcus got into the vehicle and drove toward the diner. The diner was called Rosie's and it had been open 24 hours a day for 37 years. And the woman behind the counter at 1 a.m. was not Rosie who had died in 2009, but her daughter Carol, who had the same no-nonsense efficiency and the same ability to look at a group of people who had just walked in from somewhere difficult and understand without being told that what they needed was coffee and food and to be left alone to be human for a while. She brought coffee without being asked. She brought it in the large mugs, not the regular ones. The team took up 2 booths, Marcus and Ryan in one, Tyler, Ethan, and Decker in the other. Emily sat at the counter on a stool with her rifle case leaning against the counter beside her, slightly apart from the group. Not because she was excluded, but because she had positioned herself there naturally the way she positioned herself everywhere at a slight angle to the main element with full visibility of the room. Old habits, or new ones. The kind you build so fast in the field that they feel old immediately. Carol set a mug in front of her. Emily wrapped both hands around it. The heat worked its way into her palms and she closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds and breathed. When she opened them, Ryan Cole was sitting on the stool next to her. She had not heard him move. That was interesting. He was a large man and he moved quietly, and she registered this the way she registered everything as information worth keeping. "You mind?" he said after he was already sitting. "You are already sitting," she said. "Fair point." He looked at the menu on the wall without really reading it. "I keep thinking about the hangar," he said, "about what I did." "I know," she said. "I cannot stop thinking about it." "I know that too." He turned to look at her. "Does it bother you that I cannot stop thinking about it?" She considered this honestly. "It bothers me less than if you were not thinking about it at all," she said. "The version of tonight where you dropped the rifle and it never occurred to you again that it mattered is the version that would actually bother me." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Separate things out the way you do. The hangar, the ridge, the shots, the debrief. You hold each thing in its own compartment and you do not let them bleed into each other. Most people, after a night like tonight, it all runs together, everything contaminating everything else. You keep it all clean." Emily looked at her coffee. "My grandfather used to say that emotion is not the enemy of clarity. Unprocessed emotion is the enemy of clarity. The difference is whether you are carrying things you have not examined yet. The things you have examined, you can carry forever. The things you have not examined will eventually carry you." Ryan was quiet for long enough that Carol came back and refilled both their mugs without being asked, which was the kind of service instinct that only develops over decades. "I have been carrying some things," Ryan said finally, "that I have not examined." I know, Emily said. He looked at her. How do you know? Because the way you reacted to me in that hangar was not about me, she said. Someone who reacts that specifically, that fast to someone they have never met is not reacting to the person in front of them. They are reacting to something the person in front of them reminds them of. Something older. She paused. I am not asking you to tell me what it is. I am just telling you that I knew it was not about me. That is why I did not take it personally. Ryan Cole put both hands flat on the counter and looked at them. My daughter, he said. Emily waited. She is 22. She tried to enlist 3 years ago. She is extraordinary. Scores that would have made anyone take notice. But I talked her out of it. He stopped. I told her it was not the right path, that she was too young, that she did not understand what she was getting into. A pause. What I actually meant was that I did not want to spend every deployment wondering if she was safe, that I could not do this job and simultaneously know she was doing this job, that it would break something in me that I needed intact. He looked at his coffee. She did not enlist. She went to college. She is studying engineering now, and she is good at it, and she says she is happy. He stopped again. But she was angry at me for 2 years, and she was right to be angry, because I made the decision for her. I looked at what she was capable of, and I decided for her what that capability was worth. He paused. Then you walked into that hangar, and I did it again. To a stranger, because you were the same age and you had the same look. The diner was quiet. Carol had moved to the far end of the counter. The other booth was talking quietly. Tyler describing something with his hands that made Ethan laugh, and the sound of that laugh was one of the better sounds Marcus had heard all night. Emily looked at Ryan for a long moment. Call her, she said. He blinked. Your daughter, Emily said. Call her and tell her what you told me, not the version with the operational details. The version about why you made the decision you made and whether it was yours to make. She paused. She already knows it was not about her capability. She has probably known that for 3 years. But hearing you say it changes something. It changes what she is allowed to do with it. Ryan looked at her with the expression of a man receiving advice that he would normally bristle at, and is finding to his significant surprise that he cannot bristle at it because it is simply true. When did you get this wise? He said. 10 years of my grandfather, she said. It leaves a mark. He picked up his coffee, drank, set it down. What was he like? And for the first time all night, Emily Brooks smiled. Not the controlled acknowledgement she had offered in the debrief, not the brief, functional expressions she had permitted herself between decisions. A real smile wide enough to change the whole shape of her face, bright enough that Ryan Cole sitting next to her felt something in his chest shift. He was the loudest, quiet man I have ever known, she said. He did not talk much, but when he did, the whole room stopped. He had this way of saying exactly the one thing that needed saying and nothing else, like every word had been considered and found worth its cost. She looked at the counter. He used to take me to this ridge behind his property on Sunday mornings. We would sit up there for 2-3 hours sometimes, not shooting, just watching. Just looking at the valley and the way the light moved, and the way the animals moved, and the way the wind moved the grass. And he would say, see that? And I would look, and usually I did not see whatever he was pointing at. And he would say, keep looking. And eventually I would see it, and he would say, that is what we are here for. That is the whole job, to see what is there until it reveals itself. Ryan was listening the way a man listens when he has stopped performing, listening, and is actually doing it. He sounds like someone worth knowing, he said. He was the best person I have ever known, she said. He died 14 months ago, 2 weeks before I started the sniper course. The weight of that landed quietly between them. I am sorry, Ryan said. He knew I was starting, she said. He saw my acceptance. He held the letter and he read it twice, and then he looked at me and he said, I have been waiting for this my whole life. Not your whole life, his. Like preparing me was the thing he came here to do. She stopped. He was right. It was. From the other booth, Marcus looked over at the counter and saw Ryan Cole and Emily Brooks sitting side by side with their coffee mugs, and he saw the shape of the conversation, even though he could not hear the words, and he turned back to his own booth and did not say anything about it. Some things you let happen. The food came. Carol delivered it with the efficiency of someone who had been feeding tired people at 1 a.m. for a very long time and understood that what tired people needed was food in front of them, not conversation about the food. Eggs. Toast. Something that Tyler had ordered that turned out to be approximately half the menu, and which he began addressing with systematic commitment. For a while, the team ate and did not talk about anything that had happened that night. They talked about other things. Tyler talked about his sister's new house in Savannah and how he was supposed to help her move in 3 weeks and had already determined that the number of boxes she was moving was not physically compatible with 3 weeks of recovery time. Ethan talked about a dog he was apparently considering and adopting, a question he had been circling for 6 months and which he had still not resolved. Marcus ate and listened and did not say much, which was how he usually was when the operational pressure was off and he could simply be in a room with people he trusted. Decker, at the far end of the second booth, ate with the careful attention of someone relearning that food was something you experienced rather than something you consumed for function, the specific recalibration of a person emerging from a sustained survival situation. And Emily ate her eggs at the counter and talked to Ryan Cole, and somewhere in the third cup of coffee, the conversation shifted from what had happened that night to what happened next, because Emily was the kind of person whose mind was always moving toward what happened next, not from anxiety, but from the same instinct that made her pre-plan her fallback positions before she needed them. Carver said there would be follow-on operations, she said, based on the drive. There will be, Ryan said. 6 weeks of network data, names and locations. Every name on that drive is a thread, and every thread, when you pull it, it leads somewhere else. We will be pulling threads for months. I want to be part of that, she said. Ryan looked at her. After tonight, I would be surprised if Command gave you a choice about it. I am not asking Command, she said. I am telling you, because you are the person in this building whose opinion about who goes and who does not go matters to the operational decisions that follow. She looked at him directly. I want to be part of what comes next. I have earned that. Ryan Cole, chief marksman, 21 years in the teams, the man who had dropped her rifle on a concrete floor 8 hours ago, looked at Emily Brooks and said without hesitation, yes, you have. The diner, 2 a.m, the kind of quiet that a place holds when the rest of the world has gone to sleep, and only the people who cannot sleep or who have been doing something that makes sleep temporarily impossible are still awake and still moving and still figuring out what comes next. Then Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the number, looked at it for 1 second with an expression that Emily, watching from the counter, read immediately as the expression of a man who was expecting a call, but not quite yet. He stepped outside. The team watched him go with the casual attention of people who were too tired to speculate actively, but too experienced to ignore the detail completely. He was outside for 4 minutes. When he came back in, he stood at the end of the booth and did not sit down, which told Ryan everything before a word was spoken. Carver's team has started processing the drive, Marcus said. First pass analysis is already producing results. 3 names confirmed and located. One of them is active and mobile. They have a window that closes in 18 hours. Tyler put down his fork. Ethan set his mug down. Ryan was already reading the situation. They want us. They want us, Marcus said, specifically by name. Carver requested this team for the follow-on by name. He paused, including Emily. The table was quiet for a moment. Then Tyler picked his fork back up and ate the last piece of toast on his plate with the focused efficiency of a man who was mentally already transitioning and knew better than to leave food on the table when the timeline was about to compress. How long do we have? Ryan said. Carver wants a preliminary briefing in 3 hours. She said to sleep if we can, to eat if we have not. We are eating, Tyler said, gesturing at the table. This counts. Marcus almost smiled. This counts. Emily had turned on her stool and was watching this exchange. Her coffee mug was in her hands. Her rifle case was against the counter beside him in room. Her face was the same face she had brought to everything all night, steady present, already calculating the next thing. 3 hours, she said. 3 hours, Marcus confirmed. She nodded once, turned back to her coffee, drank, and Ryan Cole watched her do it and thought about his daughter in her college apartment, probably asleep right now, probably dreaming about engineering problems or whatever it was that people who had chosen a different life dreamed about. And he thought about what Emily had said. Call her, tell her the version with why you made the decision you made and whether it was yours to make. He was going to do that. Not right now. Right now, there was a briefing in 3 hours and a window that closed in 18 hours and a name on a drive that needed to be addressed. But after, he was going to do it after. Some things you have been carrying a long time, and you do not put them down until someone shows you how. He looked at the 19-year-old sitting at the counter who had spent the night seeing what everyone else missed, including him. And he thought that if his daughter was half as clear-eyed and half as certain of her own worth as this young woman, then he had done something right after all, even in making the wrong decision. Because the qualities that made Emily Brooks extraordinary were not things you learned in a training course. They were things you learned over years from someone who took the time. He hoped his daughter had found someone who took the time. He was going to ask her after. The 3 hours passed in the particular compressed way that short windows of time pass when everyone in the room is too activated to sleep and too experienced to pretend otherwise. Emily cleaned her rifle. She did this the way she did everything methodically without hurry, each step in the same order her grandfather had taught her, starting at the action and working outward. Ryan watched her do it for a while and then pulled out his own sidearm and ran his own maintenance check. And for 20 minutes, the two of them sat in a corner of the forward operating base common room, doing the same work in companionable silence, the kind of silence that two people can only occupy together when something real has passed between them. Marcus used the time to write. He had a habit of writing after operations, not reports. Those came later, but his own accounting, the things he noticed that would not appear in any official document, who did what and why, the moments where something unexpected happened and what it revealed. He wrote about Emily, he wrote about Ryan, he wrote about the moment on the North Ridge when Ryan had broken from the extraction group and moved back toward the sound of a fight, and what that said about the man under the performance. He wrote for a long time. Ethan slept. Tyler did not sleep, but sat with his eyes closed and his breathing slow. The practiced stillness of a man who could rest a body without resting a mind, which was a different skill and a necessary one. Decker was in a separate room with a medical officer who was conducting the kind of thorough assessment that a person needed after the experience Decker had been through. He had handed over the drive with both hands and watched it go with the expression of someone releasing something they had been holding at significant personal cost, the specific relief of completed custody of a thing that was finally where it was supposed to be. At 4:45 in the morning, Carver called them in. The briefing room was smaller than the one from the previous night, tighter, more specific. The kind of room that meant the operation being discussed was the kind that did not benefit from large spaces and many chairs. Carver was at the front with two analysts Emily did not recognize. She had the same precise efficiency she had brought to the debrief plus something additional, a quality of focus that had intensified since the last time they had seen her. The focus of someone who had spent 3 hours looking at 6 weeks of intelligence and understood with increasing clarity exactly what they were looking at. The first name we confirmed from the drive, she said without preamble, is a logistics coordinator who has been moving personnel and material for this network for 4 years. He is currently located approximately 200 miles from our current position. He is scheduled to move in 18 hours. Once he moves, the network will relocate him to a position we cannot reach through current operational channels. She paused. He is also, based on cross-referencing his communication records with the operational timelines of the 6 compromised missions, almost certainly the conduit through which the leak was being communicated to the network. The room was very still. He is the connection between the leak and the network, Marcus said. He is the connection, Carver confirmed, which means he can identify the leak. If we bring him in intact, we get the drive's intelligence and we identify whoever has been burning operations for 8 weeks. She looked at the team. The window is 18 hours. We move in 6. Ryan said asset profile. Is he protected? Private security. 16 individuals. He does not trust the network's fighters after what happened to us tonight. He is using contractors he brought in separately. She paused, which is both good and bad. Good because they are not the same prepared system you went against last night. Bad because contractors of this caliber are not going to break under pressure. They will engage, and they will do it professionally. Rules of engagement, Tyler said. We want him alive, Carver said. Everyone else is a judgment call. Marcus looked at his team, the same team that had gone into a canyon 6 hours ago, expecting 15 fighters and found 50. The same team that had nearly been destroyed by a prepared defensive system and had come out the other side because of a woman on a ridge 2 miles away who could see things no one else could see. They were tired, all of them. The specific bone-deep tiredness that does not come from lack of sleep, but from sustained extreme demand on every system a person has. The kind of tired that a few hours of rest would not touch. They were also, every one of them, ready. That was the thing about this work that people who had never done it did not fully understand. Readiness was not a state you achieved and maintained through rest and preparation. Readiness was a disposition, a fundamental orientation toward the task. You were either the kind of person who was ready or you were not, and no amount of fatigue changed the fundamental orientation. Marcus looked at each of them. Tyler, who had already eaten and was already looking at the satellite imagery on the briefing table with his head tilted slightly to the left, which was what Tyler did when he was solving a problem. Ethan, who had already identified the medical considerations in the asset profile and was thinking through his kit adjustments. Ryan, who was looking at the security profile with the particular intensity of someone who was not just reading the information but building the approach sequence from it in real time. And Emily, who was looking at something on the wall map that none of the analysts had flagged yet with the particular quality of attention that Marcus had learned to recognize over the course of one very long night as the look that preceded her saying something that would turn out to be exactly right and that nobody else in the room had seen. "What are you looking at?" he said. She pointed at the map. "This road, the one he is most likely to use when he moves. It runs through a valley system that has 3 natural elevation points with clean angles to the road." She paused. "If I am positioned at the central one, I have coverage of the full movement corridor. His security cannot pass through that valley without passing through my line of sight. And if something goes wrong with the extraction and he tries to run—" "He does not run," Marcus said. "He does not run," she confirmed. "That is what I am telling you." Carver was watching this exchange. She looked at Emily, looked at the map position Emily had identified, looked at her analysts, neither of whom had identified that position, and who were now examining it with the particular expression of people who were calculating how they had missed it. They had missed it because they were looking at the problem from the ground up. Emily had looked at it from the ridge line down, 2 different pictures of the same problem. "That position goes in the plan," Carver said. Emily nodded, looked back at the map. Marcus watched her and felt the same thing he had felt standing in the doorway watching her walk across the tarmac an hour ago. That thing he did not have a clean word for that sat between gratitude and admiration, and something else, something that had to do with the specific quality of being in the presence of someone doing exactly what they were built to do and knowing it and not needing anyone to tell them. The briefing continued for another 40 minutes. The plan took shape with a particular organic quality of good operational planning, each element connecting to the others. Each contingency accounted for each person's role, defined by their specific capability rather than their seniority or their history or anything other than what they were actually capable of doing. When it was done, Carver looked at the team one final time. 6 hours, she said. Be ready. They were already ready. They had been ready since before they walked into this room. Some of them had been ready their entire lives. The team filed out. Marcus was last. At the door, Carver said his name. He turned. She was looking at him with the expression she had used when she told Emily that she had not read a field performance report like this one in 16 years. Specific. Considered. The look of someone choosing their words with the same care Emily chose her shots. The leak investigation, she said. We have a preliminary direction based on the drive analysis. I cannot give you the name yet. 24 hours, maybe less. She paused. But I want you to know that everyone on your team is clean. I wanted you to hear that directly and not from a document. Marcus let that settle. The specific relief of a thing you had not known you were worried about until the worry was removed. Thank you, he said. Thank her, Carver said. If the drive had not made it out, we would not have the thread to pull. If the team had not made it out, the drive does not move. She looked at him steadily. You built something in that canyon last night. Not just a successful operation. Something else. The kind of team that is more than the sum of its parts because the parts have seen each other at the absolute limit and they know what they found there. Marcus looked at her for a moment. Yes, he said, that is exactly what we built. He walked out into the morning. The sun was coming up. The specific early light of a desert morning, pale and clean, and without the heat that would come later, and Marcus stood in it for a moment and let it hit him. Let the warmth of it touch his face. Somewhere behind him, Ryan Cole was finding a quiet corner to make a phone call to his daughter in Savannah. Marcus did not know this with certainty, but he knew Ryan, and he knew what Emily had said to him at the counter, and he knew the look on Ryan's face when she said it. Some things you know without being told. He walked toward the quarters building. 6 hours. He would sleep for 5 of them and use the last one to think through the plan one more time, the way he always did, building the sequence in his mind until it was so familiar that execution would feel like memory. He passed Emily in the corridor. She was carrying her rifle case and she was heading the same direction. Same pace, same economy of movement she brought to everything. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "Your grandfather would have been proud of you tonight." Emily did not break stride. She looked straight ahead. And when she answered, her voice was the same voice she had used all night, steady, honest, without performance. "He was proud of me before tonight," she said. "That is the only reason tonight was possible." They walked the rest of the way in silence. And that was the truth of it, the whole truth of it, the thing that all the after-action reports and commendation recommendations and intelligence analyses would circle around without quite capturing. That what Emily Brooks had done in that canyon on that ridge in the dark with the wind shifting and the window closing and every voice in the channel telling her the odds were wrong had not begun the night before in an Arizona hangar. It had begun 10 years earlier on a ridge in Montana with an old Marine and a rifle in a valley full of things that revealed themselves only to those patient enough to keep looking. The greatest weapon Emily Brooks had ever carried was not the custom-built rifle on her back. It was the certainty built over 10 years of being seen clearly by someone who loved her, that what she could see was real, that what she knew was worth saying, and that the measure of a person was not the rank they wore or the years they had served, but the quality of their attention in the moment, when attention was the only thing standing between the people they were responsible for and everything trying to destroy them. She had that certainty when she walked into the hangar. She carried it out. And from that morning forward, in every operation that followed, in every briefing, where a new face looked at her age and opened their mouth to say something they would later regret, the name Emily Brooks arrived before she did, and it arrived with the full weight of what it meant, and the mouths closed before the words came out. Because some things, once they have been proven in the field, do not require proving again.